Well, thank you for being here. And I usually start speaking by saying thank you for being here because after 17 years of not speaking, of being silent, those were the first words that I said. And I said them to an audience of family and friends in Washington, D.C. on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, 1990. And my mother and father had come to hear me speak because they hadn't heard me speak in such a long time. People from the news media, National Geographic, and showed up, and I said, thank you for being here. When I said thank you for being here, I was thanking the audience for being here because during those 17 years of not speaking, I realized something about communication. And the one most important thing about communication, besides giving a message, was that someone would hear the message. And so I was thanking the audience for actually coming to hear me say what I had to say. Thank you for being here. And so I said those words, and as they went out into the audience, my mother jumps up out of her seat, and she goes, "Hallelujah, Johnny is talking." Now, I mean, after 17 years of not hearing your son talk, it's a big event in our family, I guess. My dad was a different kind of a person. He just looked at me and he said, "That's one." Now, I should tell you, my father was following all over the country, and he was always saying, "John, you have to, ride in cars and talk." So when he said that was one, he was referring to, okay, so now you're talking. Now you got to start riding in cars now, Now I hadn't been speaking for such a long time when those words went out, and there's a lot of this. Thank you for being here. There's a lot in that because I didn't recognize my voice. So I said, "Thank you for being here." And I turned around to look and see who the hell was saying what I was thinking. And it turned out it was me. And I thought that was so funny. I was standing there in front of the audience, and I was kind of chuckling to myself. Oh, and my dad, he looked at me, and I could see the things going through. He's like, "Yeah, he really is crazy. Look at him up there." Well, the reason that I want to tell you this about this journey, and thank you, Chris, for that introduction, it really changed my life seeing an oil spill. And I really wanted to do something. And so the reason that I started speaking on Earth Day, because I want to say this right up front, because this is probably the most important thing that I learned by 17 years of not speaking and walking across America, was that people are part of the environment. People are part of the environment. And I mean, I've heard that, and people kind of accept that. Oh, yeah, we're all part of the environment, and that's really a good thing. But I said, well, if that's true, if it's true that people are part of the environment, then our first opportunity, our first chance to do something good for the environment, to be sustainable, is in how we treat each other. So how we treat each other manifests in the physical environment around us. And so we have all these environmental issues. So environment to me became about human rights and civil rights and economic equity and gender equality and all the ways that we relate to each other. And so I chose Earth Day to start speaking because I wanted to remind myself that now that I'm going to speak, I want to speak for the environment, which had become so much more than just about pollution and loss of species and habitat, all important stuff. But number one for me had become how we treat each other. So I want to go back to this time of the oil spill and take you on this journey and ask you to realize that we're all part of the same journey. Now, my first time to Oregon, to Portland, was when I walked here. So I'm kind of like coming home to be with you, and this is the journey that I'm still on, and the journey that we're all sharing together. So I'm sharing your journeys and all the wonderful speakers that we've had here, their journeys. I know they've invited us to be part of their journeys as well. So this started for me back in 1971, as was mentioned. 2 oil tankers collided near the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And I was living in a little town called Inverness in Marin County, West Marin County, with my girlfriend Jean. And Jean and I decided that we were going to go see the oil spill. We'd never seen anything like this. And so we got in our car and we started driving. You see anything yet, honey? No, John, I don't see nothing. Now, Jean didn't really sound like that, right? That's what we call a theatrical device. I'm on a stage, right? Come on. And so Jean didn't see anything, but we could smell the oil. We could smell the oil, and it was like one of those things that really so visceral that I realized that we couldn't turn around, we couldn't go away, we couldn't turn the page and get away from it. It was there. We could smell it. Fortunately for us, it was so foggy that we couldn't actually see. So we turned around and we headed back up to our little bucolic cottage in Inverness, and not a tiny house though. It was a small house. It's tiny houses are really interesting. I have to talk to Dee after this. But we got back to Inverness, and we didn't think very much of it, except, God, we wanted to do something. I had said to Jean, I said, hey, why don't we give up riding in cars? And she looked at me and she just kind of, and we could walk. And she said, look, John, we don't have any money. And so if people would just see us walking, they were going to say, look at those bums walking. They can't even afford to, hitchhike. They don't have, This is way before Forrest Gump, see? So people walking and no one was following us. And so we decided that we would just, live our lives up in Marin County. And I think Jean had some case, a big legal case coming up, and she was going to make lots of money. And she said, now when we get that money, then we can walk. And I thought that was a good idea. So one day, there was a knock on our door, and went to answer the door, and it was Marty Shoemaker from up the road, and he said, Jerry Tanner's boat capsized. He was with his family. His family's safe, but he was lost in the Tamales Bay, which is a long, narrow bay outside of where we live. And Jerry Tanner, he's lost. Now, Jerry Tanner was a deputy sheriff, right? He and I were not the best of friends. We lived in this town of about 300 people, so you had to talk to everybody because that's what the town was. Jean grew these plants, and Jerry was always running around in the yard, going, John, Jean, what is this? And suffice it to say that we did inhale. I guess you could be president now. It's okay. But when I told the story some time ago, but we did inhale, and Jerry was, part of the, scene. But we would talk late at night, Jerry, we would talk late at night about where we were from and what we were doing, and so we kind of got along. We had a kind of a relationship. So we picked some peas from the garden when we heard that, and we gave them to Jerry's mother. And we decided that we're going to go on a walk to celebrate Jerry's life. And we're actually going to go to the Lion Share, which is a nightclub. Oh, it's about 20 miles away. And we're going to walk there to hear our favorite band, because they live in the community that we lived in Inverness, called the Youngbloods. Now, how many people here have heard of the Youngbloods? All the old people, right. I mean, you've probably heard their music, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, gotta. All right, see, I'm going to tell Jesse, he's going to love that. And I could sing more, but then I would have to pay residuals, and I can't afford that right now. So we went to see the Youngbloods, and we walked the 20 miles. How many people here have walked 20 miles? Hey, this is Portland, right? And we walked 20 miles, and it was a very long walk, but if you left at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you could imagine when you're going to get to the nightclub, right? So in the morning, everybody was on their way back to Inverness. And they said, John, Gene, you guys walked all this way. It's incredible. Can we get in the car and we'll drive you back? And we said, no, we're going to walk. That's what we're going to do. And so we rested up at the Howard Johnson's with the pool for a couple of days there. No need to suffer. And the next day, we walked back to Inverness, and there was a big celebration for us. John and Jean, the crazy guys, had walked all the way and now they're walking back, and here they are home. And that was a good thing. On the way is when I realized, and this is something that happened. On the way, I realized that we were walking already, and that because Jerry and I were about the same age, and he was gone now, it made me think and understand that we only have this moment to do the things that we think we want to do, or we're going to do, or this is it. This is our gift. Dee said, getting up in the morning? Yeah, that's right. You get up in the morning, and this is our gift. So I said, Gene, we're walking. We're walking right now. Why don't we just keep walking? And Jean, with all the love in her heart and, wisdom of, being 20 years older than me, she said, bye. She didn't say that. But she did say, no, she couldn't do it because she had a court case and she had to drive over the hill and do judge things, and she was going to make a lot of money and everything. And so it just left it up to me that I was just going to continue walking, which I did. I started continuing walking and arguing with the people in my community about whether one person could make a difference walking. And I'd get tired of arguing. I'd call my mom and my dad up in Philadelphia because, Mom, yeah, it's Johnny. Uh-huh. Well, no, I just wanted to let you know that, listen, I gave up riding in cars. No, I'd have to walk. Yeah, it's a long walk. Dad? My dad wants to know why I didn't do this when I was 16. I didn't know about the environment then. Yeah, but I'm really happy. Everything's going. Oh. Okay, Mom. Thanks. My mother said if I was really happy, I wouldn't have to say so. Mothers are like that. They kind of get in and tell you what's going on. So here I am walking in Point Reyes in Inverness, and I'm arguing all the time. And so what wonderful thing happens is I have all this time to do things. And one of the things is I have a time to paint, but I want to just give you an idea of who that person was back in those days. And I was either called Pisces John or the crazy walking man, but I had a good, this is a self-portrait, by the way, so I took that. I didn't mind looking that way. I felt that's who I am. And so I did have some time now, because I was walking, I did have time to start something that I always wanted to do, and that was to paint. I wanted to paint, and so on the first day of the year in 1973, I started painting. This is my first painting, and I want to show you the painting because it's an artifact, right? It's an evolution, and we're like, it's a journey. So here's my first painting on New Year's Day, 1973, and I painted every day for about 30 years. But here's my second painting. Yeah, nice, huh? It's a periwinkle. Periwinkle. Most of you botanists, I know you'll say, very good, John. Very good, periwinkle. But I did progress, and I started with, this is bamboo, and then I realized when I started painting bamboo, it was everywhere, and that word that I looked up in the dictionary was called ubiquitous. Wow, it was everywhere. And so every day I painted it. I painted bamboo. I would sit in front of it and I'd paint it. And sometimes I would do things like I would look at it and try to paint what I remembered of it later that evening. I did all kinds of things about sitting and looking at the bamboo until it came right up to my birthday. And on my birthday, I knew I was going to be silent for one day, I said. That's all. And so that day, that's what I painted, a circle with a dot. And I was silent for one day. And during that day, I realized a lot of different things. One of the things that I realized was that I hadn't been listening. Once I got to a certain age, I thought I knew everything. And so I would listen to someone just enough to think I knew what they were going to say, and then I was going to tell them what it was that I knew that was better than what they thought they knew or what I thought they knew. And I wasn't listening. And because I wasn't listening, I wasn't learning. And so on that day, I started learning so much that I said, I better do this another day. And another day. My paintings kind of changed a little bit. My bamboo became more, I don't know, like that. It was about a week I had not been speaking, and my neighbors and friends were getting worried because I did say this was in the 70s, and we did inhale. So some people thought it was the end of the world. John is not writing, he doesn't talk end of the world coming, Aquarian age, whatever it was. And some people just thought, well, he's just crazy. Meanwhile, a month had gone by, and I decided that what I was going to do was not speak for 1 year. And then on my next birthday, I would revisit my decision, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I'd never been quiet before. My journals took another change where words started coming. I started writing about the weather, and I would walk, and I would do my paintings and drawings, and I would get different scenes and different feelings, and this went on for a very long time, at least a year. This is in October, these paintings, and the end of the year is December, when I did a poem about Manito, or the Great Spirit, ending up with the salmon returning. Manito is the salmon strong returning here from sea to spawn. Manito is the great wind, the flash among the green, the gentle rain upon the trees. A voice is the stream. The Manito is the quiet voice, splashes. Manito is the Great Spirit. And this was really great that I was going out and getting into the environment, and I really felt that, now I'm really feeling what the environment is. But remember, I told you something about what the environment really is. It's about people. And so while I was silent, I made myself go every day and find someone and ask them in a silent way if I could sit with them and draw them and make a portrait of them and whoever they were. And I'd find people that I didn't know and make that connection with them. Oh, this is about that. This WDS is about that connection with people that we don't know, that we get together, that we're all cousins. Is that right, AJ? Cousins. I like that. We are all cousins, you know. And so I made myself be with people, and that's where I started to get this feeling that the environment is also, we're also part of the environment. Now, my paintings changed and my walking changed. I started walking back and forth from California up to Oregon, up to the Kamiopsis Wilderness. And I walked to the Kamiopsis Wilderness and back down to California, back to my home in Inverness. And this is what my home looked like. I was able to put it on paper, and these are the artifacts of the changes that I have been going through. I went to school up in Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon, and I took 2 years. Oh, thank you, Ashland. Okay, SOSC, SOSC. And I went there, and in 2 years I got my degree because they gave me 2 years credit on a program called Prior Learning Experience. 2 years credit they gave me for things that I learned and had done while walking, painting, and I lived in the wilderness, and they had a natural history course for the wilderness that was 9 credits. They had a 12-credit course in nonverbal communication. I got that too, 12 credits for that. and playing the banjo strings, and it was education seems to me is more than just being in a classroom, that it was also about being out on the road and being with people and learning from each other. So when I graduated from the college in Ashland, I graduated with this idea that I wanted to walk and sail around the world as part of my education, in the spirit and hope that I could be of benefit to humankind, but I didn't know what that meant. Those are those imperfect steps, Jada, you were talking about. Just go, just start. And so that's what I did. I started a nonprofit organization called Planet Walk and began walking across America and around the world. Well, the first part of my walk came up through Oregon into Seattle, and then over to Port Townsend, Washington, where there was a wooden boat building community, and I built my first wooden boat and rowed that across Puget Sound and sold the boat in Bainbridge Island and continued walking across the Washington into Idaho and down into Missoula, Montana, to the University of Montana. Now, I had written those guys at the University of Montana and made application to come to the university and study for a master's degree in environmental studies. And they said, when will I get there? And I said, about 2 years, because I'm walking and I don't talk. And they said, we'll be waiting for you. 2 years later, I showed up, and they said, you must be John Francis. I think the banjo was a really dead giveaway. And so I went to school there, and I actually taught. I was a TA, where I did one of those things where my class would come in, and I'd go, what's he talking about? I said, I think he's talking about clear cutting. And someone said, oh no, he's not clear cutting because see, he's using a handsaw. Well, you can clear cut with a handsaw. No, I think he's talking about selective forestry. And I would just kind of step back because it was a discussion group, and let everybody discuss. And there were sometimes I would make signs and they would say things, and I'd go, God, I didn't mean that at all. But I should have. Well, I finished school, and I did graduate with a master's degree. And my father came. He came to the other school as well. I didn't tell you that part. He came to the other school to see me graduate in Oregon. And he says the same thing all the time. And what he says is, look, Johnny, we're really proud of you. Your mother and I, we think that you're doing great. But what are you going to do with a master's degree if you don't drive in cars and talk? You know, and I hunched my shoulders, I put my backpack on, and I continue walking. I walked from Montana down into Idaho, across the plains into South Dakota, and spent time there learning how to be a printer. And while I was there, I made an application to a PhD program at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Ooh. All right, I'm touching all the places here. And so I enrolled into the PhD program there, and they gave me a fellowship. And they said, we want you to just study. We don't want you to work or anything like that. And I did, and I wrote on oil spills, oil pollution, and the effects of oil pollution. And when I finished passed my final exam, there was this big spill called the Exxon Valdez, right? And the Exxon Valdez spill, and there was only one person in the United States studying oil spills at that level. When the admiral called the university to talk to John Francis, who didn't talk. And they said, well, he doesn't talk. And he says, well, we just want to get him to come out to Washington so he can help us with this. What? Are there any normal people at your university? Spoke with my major professor, and that was a good thing. He spoke with him, and they told him everything he needed to know. And my dad came out because I was getting ready to leave, and he looked at me and he says, God, my sister said I should leave you alone because you seem to be doing so much better when you're not saying anything. But what are you going to do with a PhD if you don't ride in cars and talk? I hunch my shoulders, I grab my banjo, my backpack, and I go on. And there I am in Washington, D.C., on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, when I start speaking again. And now I have been made a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations Environment Program, and I'm working for the federal government writing oil pollution regulations, and I'm, scratching my head and saying, listen, if someone had said to me, John, I want you to just, you want to make a difference? Get out of your car, start walking, walk east, and I walked a little bit away, and they said, yeah, and shut up, too. and you're going to make a difference. I would have said, wow, God, they've been inhaling a little too much. But that's exactly what happened. That's just how things happen for us to make our journeys, to just take that step, to do that thing that we learned today, which is, the things that we're afraid to do or that we just need courage to do it, because you're going to make a difference. I mean, you are making a difference right now just by being here, just by getting up. But keep on keeping on. And I want to just finish up with, I'm going to start playing when I leave, but I just want to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing now. And now I'm back at the University of Wisconsin, and I teach a course called Planet Walking, and these are some of my students, and we're walking back across the United States. Every year, we walk about 100 and so miles. It's going to take a while. And here's my first planet walker, the planet roller, who is rolling in a wheelchair, and I've taken Planet Walk to China, and now we're walking in China, and this is on the walk in China, students, high school students walking, and we measure all kinds of different parameters in the environment. This is water quality, and that's what I'm doing now, working as a National Geographic explorer and volunteer to raise environmental consciousness, and I'm going to play myself right out of here. And